creating time for Fireside. At Fireside, you're going to discuss politics, policy, and polity. The week has been very high octane, and we've had finally the impeached president has gone home, and now we have a new deputy president, which has filled a vacuum. We've got a team of highly regarded analysts. For the first time, we have Noordean Khagai. He's an advocate of the High Court, and he's got a very interesting title. CPM, understand it's a rare occurrence. Later on, he'll tell us what that means. And then we have Odoyo Owidi, who is a politician. He has had running battles with most politicians in Kenya. He's experienced and seasoned. And he tells us what he can see seated, we can't see while we are standing. Now, Noordean.
Yes.
The Botswana had a presidential election.
Yes.
And Adomo Boko was sworn in at the High Court.
Yeah.
And tomorrow is taking office.
Yes.
The office of the president in Botswana, they've invited journalists to go and cover the handing over ceremony, which is taking place tomorrow, 7:30. And understand what they want to do is that by 8 o'clock they're done. The president will hit the ground running at exactly 8 o'clock. In Kenya, it has to be a big event done before 2 p.m. And it's very elaborate. One would say that in Botswana, it's probably going to cost them literally nothing to swear in their president. Well, in Kenya, it's a big expenditure, fanfare. Why do we love so much ceremony, pomp and color?
You know, the problem with Kenya is that we are traumatized citizens. In that everything that we go through that has traumatized us, we legislate upon it. And I say this because the reason why we have the procedure that we have after a new president-elect is there.
With an act, the Assumption of Office Act.
Yes. The reason is because someone said to swear himself in at night once. And so that is why you're told you cannot swear yourself in past 2 p.m.
Now, Noordean, as a lawyer, you cannot just say that somebody decided to swear himself at night. Who is this person?
That's former President Kibaki.
Okay, call a spade a spade.
Yes. So he decided to swear himself in during the night. And that created chaos because we are all aware what happened after that. And so they came up with this way of doing things so that you cannot be sworn in past 2 p.m. And then the other thing is that...
And it has to be in a public place.
Yes. That is, and now you know that tender premiers have to make money. Yeah, those ones will procure the tents and the seats and everything at the end of the day. Because also we love making money as a people. And then also the other thing is that the reason why there's so much time is so that for those who always have to go to Supreme Court. And you know people take a lot of evidence in Supreme Court. If you remember the last election, there was an entire canter that was termed hot air, sadly. That it gives you room for you to be able to go and take your cries and feel that if you can be able to annul an election that you feel was not credible. So that we are given that time. Some will say it's a long exercise, but I believe it's good so that we once every step has been concluded. When the new president takes over, we move on. But sadly, even after that, we spend the next 2 years politicking. We spend the next 2 years of how we are going to have that candidate that did not end up winning joining government. Like right now, we're having a bread-based government. Oh, sorry, I meant broad-based.
That was deliveries.
We're having that so-called government. And it's interesting because what is the role of having an election if we see the same happen each and every other time? So we're a unique country, and I believe the current president was a former deputy president. He once said, we have a unique formation of government where the opposition is in government and part of the government is in opposition, when he was outside but inside. It reminds me of a song by Piuni, Tulidhani uko ndani kumbe uko nje. So that tells you how we put our things. Sometimes it's more or less like, it's kind of topsy-turvy, but it's how we are, sadly. But I do believe that the process that leads to the swearing of a new president is actually a good process because it has healed some issues that were brought about by 2007. And it's just that sometimes some think it takes time, but it's good. So that we clean that arena, and anyone who's dissatisfied with an election, after the courts have made a determination, we move forward. And that means now whoever assumes office should now focus on their manifesto, as opposed to still remaining in a campaign zone. Because you know we win elections in this country to plan for the next elections. Immediately we won 2002, those people are planning 2027. So at the end of the day, I believe we just need to put our things in order as a country so that we don't spend the entire 5 years politicking and then we say there's no time. Then Khagai comes up with a crazy bill of saying that we need 7 years because 5 is not enough. I dare say what you can do in 5 years can be done in 7 years at the end of the day.
Well, the 7-year proposal has been rejected by everybody. Now, Odoyo, yes. Noordean says that you support, I don't know whether did you say broad-based or bread-based governments?
Bread-based.
Yeah, he says you support a bread-based government. Are you a beneficiary of that bread?
I am not really a beneficiary of that one he's talking about.
The broad or the bread?
But I'm a beneficiary of inclusivity in government. We need to be very careful about certain things we observe and see happening in this country. Some of them are planned and organized and implemented by very serious anti-government forces. One of the reasons why President William Ruto had to bring in some people from outside his coalition is he quickly realized that even within his coalition, he can trust not everybody. His own deputy seemed to have backed the what I call an attempted coup against him. And then he realized that if soldiers from my own camp are firing towards our camp, then I have soldiers from outside our camp who are willing to be firing from my corner. Why don't we do that so that we have stability? And of course, whatever the president did was genius.
But the High Court pronounced itself Thursday evening.
Mm-hmm.
And in a short space of time, we saw gazette notices, flying off the shelf, like hotcakes. And then the following day is a public holiday, and Professor Kindiki was sworn into office. Were you surprised that the government is very effective and efficient in swearing in the deputy president?
Mischief must be countered by mischief. There was a lot of mischief in the court processes that we saw going on. You remember on the last day, we had a case, it ended, the judges pronounced themselves on the matter, and suddenly the Gachagua team came like they were appealing the ruling in that very, very court. They wanted a review, it was too much. So instead of taking the country through all that, do things fast enough so that you have something almost Solomonic. Because nobody has stopped any further court process by the impeached DP. And at the same time, the country is running complete with a president and a deputy president. It's a win-win situation because Gachagua has not lost anything. He can still go to court. If he wins, then we will deal with what has already happened. He can claim damages if necessary. But when we are going to get a time when you see somebody from his camp comes to tell Kenyans that we can run with this thing until 2027, then what we saw, the Wambora mischief, I think the judges decided that this is a very good opportunity to deal with the Wambora mischief of being impeached by the legal institutions that are supposed to impeach him, and then he runs to court and misuse the courts to remain in power for 3 years. That is a mischief that had to be dealt with.
Now,
and I think the jurisprudence that has been created now has dealt with it once and for all.
Now, President Ruto indicated that the last 2 years have been a challenge for him.
Yes.
That he's been working without an assistant who has got capacity and competence, especially to engage in policy communications. What do you expect from Professor Kithure Kindiki in the next 100 days?
Before I even tell you what I will expect from Professor Kithure Kindiki, I have to back the president on that assertion. When the president wanted to explain the funding models, the SHA and all that, he was almost doing it himself and alone. The most painful one he was struggling to have town halls to explain the funding model. Those are some of the things that should have been done by the DP, organizing the vice chancellors of universities to explain this to the people. I saw the president going around the country, especially after the Gen Z breaching parliament, to explain himself, to tell the country what he's doing. You know, in politics, many bad things happen and many good things happen. But if the public are not told about the bad things and about the good things, they end up not even knowing about it.
Actually, you raised a very fundamental issue from a communication perspective, that the only person, or rather the only people you see talking about the Kenya Kwanza administration successes is the president, William Samoei Ruto, and PCS Musalia Mudavadi.
Yes.
So at some stage you wonder, where are the rest of the cabinet secretaries and where are the principal secretaries? Like, for instance, when you're talking about the education funding model, one would expect the cabinet secretary in charge of education to be on top of that situation.
Yes.
If you're the cabinet secretary for education and you have no capacity nor competence to discuss the funding model, what are you doing in office? When you are the cabinet secretary responsible for health and you have no capacity to discuss the healthcare reforms in Kenya, what are you doing in office? Noordean.
You know, what I find interesting in that question is that who is the appointing authority? It is the president. You remember back then, before this new cabinet, there's a time when they were signing their new performance contracts. And he said most of them do not understand the scope of their ministries, don't understand what is happening in the ministries. And he went ahead and gave them new contracts. So what does that say? Let's say I'm having a company. I am the owner of the company. You do not meet my targets. You do not meet your work schedule and everything. Then instead of, and I keep warning, instead of me putting someone who's competent, I retain you and add you a new contract.
So in other words, you're saying
yes,
that President Ruto should take liability for the incompetence
there's a
of his cabinet secretary.
There's a statement during last regime, people used to say, the buck stops with Uhuru. It stops with the current president as it is. Because it is very unfortunate that when this new cabinet was brought in, and the new CS for health was asked about SHA/SHIF, actually equated the same to Hustler Fund. What does that tell you? So who did you put in office at the end of the day? So if for example, you decide to put incompetent people in office who cannot share the ideas that are in cabinet, that you discuss in cabinet, then it stops with you. At the end of the day, I ask myself a question. When you meet in cabinet, do you deliberate? Do you discuss? Or are the ministers, once they get their cabinet secretaries, are they just given that this is what is happening, go with this? And it stems from the fact that it's like they just sit somewhere, they're being told, move to the left, they move. The right, it's like there's no room for creativity. It's like a one-man show, because that's what the ministers are showing us at the end of the day. If you cannot articulate issues that are discussed in cabinet, then what role do you play as a CS? Then that goes back to the president. Because if he says, for example, like the other day has told us he's been a loner, I won't entirely say it's true, because I remember even this finance bill that Kenyans were up against, Gachagua was with him trying to say they have to pass it. Because I remember Mushomba was against it, and he even warned her, if you remember. So I believe it's just that, as you rightfully say, what criteria was used to appoint some of these people as cabinet secretaries? And if you feel they do not meet the criteria that you want so that they can be able to discuss these issues, then you might as well just hire competent people. Because you can't hire people who are not competent and then come and complain to us. Who is the appointing authority? You are. So
Odoyo,
check your house before you come to us.
So Odoyo, Noordean says that President Ruto has appointed some people who have capacity challenges, who do not understand their dockets, either as principal secretaries or cabinet secretaries. They do not engage in communication. And you know, as we were told when we were growing up, if you wink at a girl in the dark, you know what you're doing, the girl has no idea. So the Wanjiku, Mura, the taxpayers have no idea what the administration is doing. And that's why they keep on saying that Kenya Kwanza administration is sleeping on the job.
Let me tell you something. I noticed many people in this country, especially those who have issues with the current government, saying that the president once said that he has ministers who have no idea what they are doing. I remember I sat only 3 rows from the president, and this is what he said. He said, if I find I know more than you in your ministry, then we have a problem. He did not say they do not know, but he warned them that he finds he knows more than them. And actually, after that meeting, we left State House feeling that we are letting the president down. As the chief whip of the Council of Chairs, we started a meeting going round the country, telling the people what the government is doing and what the government is expected to do and what will continue doing. Some of these people, you say, for example, I have a minister in water. That is my minister. One, Eric Muga, who actually is a Gen Z. Very hands-on. And he will shock you. The guy understands issues. The guy understands issues water. He's an engineer. He's a water engineer. That he will challenge any engineer you find around. He would get things going the right way. In fact, if we had such ministers, there would be a different. But remember also, ministers are leaders. Those CSS, they are leaders of those ministries. They are not entirely the experts, because those ministries is more than, for example, water, Ministry of Water. It's more than just water engineering. It is much more. Leadership, guidance, finance, and all that. Even politics is there.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. So a CS does not really need to be entirely a professional in that field. In any case, there's ministries which have more than just that profession in it. So you need to get the right team to help you deliver.
So what happens when the right team is not assisting you in delivery?
When there are, a good leader will always make, for example, if you make me a CS today, I will ensure that...
Is that one of your prayers?
In that ministry, I know this can be done best by so-and-so, this can be done best by so-and-so, and when all that matter comes to me, I can see what they mean. But before we proceed, there was something Khagai said about Rigathi helping the president. And he said...
In policy communications.
Yes, he says, even though Wamuchomba was against it, he was still helping the president. There is something in politics. For example, today, even if I was right, I cannot oppose the president. Wamuchomba is not the person to oppose Rigathi, even if Rigathi was wrong. In politics, there are people who are almost mouthpieces of others. So if you see Wamuchomba speaking, no, it is Rigathi Gachagua speaking, don't doubt it. So we like hiding behind blades of grass. Let's not hide. When
is it possible to hide
that would be interesting.
A blade of grass?
Yeah, there are people who try to hide behind a blade of grass. When you see Wamuchomba speaking, and then you say, okay, Wamuchomba is saying this, but Rigathi is opposed to it. That is hiding behind a blade of grass. That is not it. So, in this matter of the cabinet being qualified or not qualified, those people are leaders on their own rights. It is only them to make sure, to make a choice, to deliver or not to deliver. A minister of health doesn't even need to be a doctor. We have heard that before. But he has to provide leadership in that ministry such that he ensures that matters. For example, director of medical services has to be a properly qualified person to deal with that. Director of public health has to be the right person to deal with that. Chief of finance has to be the right person to deal with that. That is how you do it. You provide leadership, just like the president. The president can be anybody from any field, but he provides leadership.
The current cabinet secretary for health seems to be lost in the woods, despite the fact that she's got a master's in medicine. She was on another radio station. She couldn't explain how the payments were going to be done. And during a National Assembly hearing, she was lost in the woods. So one begins to wonder, you've been in office for about 3 months. You're a medical doctor, but you do not understand the reforms.
I personally would not like to comment on that because I didn't watch that show in the radio where she failed here or there. And by the way, I am not very sure if I know her very well. I think I've seen her once or twice. But going forward, I will be able to say something about her.
You know the blunder.
I know you are in an uncomfortable position, Noordean.
you know the blunder you just spoke about when she was unable to articulate the issues that were raised. People are actually making fun of the situation. They're actually saying, because the former CS who was there was unable to do her work as well. And that is why you see the intern problems, where interns were even sleeping outside of your house, which was very, very sad at the end of the day. So they're even saying, this is more like, remember back in the day, you used to have those DVDs. So exit Nakumicha CDA, enter CDB, because she's more or less just doing exactly what Nakumicha was doing. That's a sad reality. And this is where I bring in and I say that he rightfully says you don't have to be a doctor to lead the ministry, but you have to have some certain qualifications, leadership qualifications, to actually be able to move the ministry ahead. But if you don't have, then the appointing authority has a problem. Because what did he see in you for him to appoint you? Because at the end of the day, if, for example, you don't provide leadership, and you remember, Nakumicha was unable to provide leadership because she was unable to solve the intern issues. She was left with that issue and she couldn't solve it because there were some level of high-headedness. And yes, it's a tough situation.
Yeah, the head of the public service actually had to come in.
He had to come in and try and mediate.
Yeah.
You get. So that's why I say the appointments you make, the problem, let's just go straight to the point. The appointments we make appointments because I say, you and I were in trenches together. We suffered. So I've got into office. Let wacha nikuvute. Sema pole umeumia. Or we are drinking buddies. It can't be that way. Or you know what? You are loyal to me. But you offer nothing at the end of the day.
No, but talking about these appointments, there are people of the view that when you're crafting the 2010 Constitution, your professional colleagues, lawyers, they ring-fenced so many high-profile jobs for themselves that to take this position, you must be a lawyer. You must be a lawyer. You must be a lawyer. Or you haven't taken note of that? Are you being uncomfortable?
No, I'm not uncomfortable.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I remember when we were making Ringera the chief of anti-corruption.
Yeah.
If you looked at what then the former Meru governor, what was his name? Kiraitu.
Yes.
Kiraitu was the boss. If you looked at how they crafted the whole thing, it's like they had put Ringera's CV and they were writing the requirements.
They're using the CV as a template.
Yes. And let me tell you, because most of the things matters, law, crafting, policies, and rules is done by lawyers. You've seen how they have easily and slowly removed certified public accountants from being company secretaries. And now it's like we are beginning to say it is lawyers who are going to be company secretaries.
Yeah, certified public secretaries.
Yeah, yes. But they go through the course.
But if you look at the syllabus for CPS, it is the correct one for being a company secretary. It is the correct one. It has law in it, it has accounts in it, it has management in it, all that in it. But somebody is going to bring a person whose only training is a lawyer. That is a lawyer.
It's the same thing about IBC. That to be the chair, you must be a lawyer.
I think that is also wrong because the law is written in English. All you need to do is a small brief and you are good to go. Let me tell you, even you are expected to obey and follow the law wherever you are. Is it only IEBC where the law is required? Even where I sit, I am expected to obey and follow the constitution of this republic. So, and I am not one lawyer.
So Noordean has opened a Pandora's box.
So they do this thing of they want everything, a lawyer. Even the chairman of National Lands Commission doesn't need to be a lawyer. In fact, it would have been better off if this guy was a quantity surveyor. But because it is the lawyers who draft these things, and some of our MPs let these things pass through them without taking notes. And it goes, then it's passed.
The beauty of how...
So in the end, this country will be a country where only lawyers have jobs.
Yeah, that is true, by the way.
It is true. It is true.
Yeah.
The beauty of having a lawyer.
Soon they will say school principals must be lawyers. And university presidents must be lawyers. They will say...
You're about to make a powerful statement.
You see, the beauty about having lawyers in those positions that you've just quoted is that when it comes to interpretation of it, laws or anything, they will assist.
No.
When it comes to...
Just stop there. That position doesn't fly because we know for a fact IEBC, as constituted today, has probably got the highest number of external lawyers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if the chairman, as a lawyer, is supposed to do all this interpretation Noordean is attempting to talk about, I think now you said somebody hiding behind a blade of grass. That is what he's doing. So you have the IBC chairman who is a lawyer. How come the highest number of external lawyers are at IBC? Even their budget, somebody was complaining the other day, saying that up to 50% of their budget goes to paying lawyers.
And what IEBC chair has to deal with is data and statistics more than issues of law.
Yeah.
Issues of law are very clear. Those very people who are coming to contest those seats have even studied the articles and chapters that are required for those things. They don't need IEB to be a lawyer. We don't need National Lands Commission chair to be a lawyer. We don't need that, because even those organizations have legal officers, corporation secretaries, and so on, who understand more law.
Yeah, but now because Noordean is uncomfortable with this subject, his peers may be on his case. Now,
let's go.
In Kenya, we've got a president who has a PhD. And then his deputy president has got a PhD. And, as a product of 844, we were told that when you've got superior academic qualifications, you should expect very positive outcomes. So should we expect very positive outcomes from these two PhD holders?
There's something people also need to understand. As we sit here, my training is education.
You're a teacher.
One of the reasons why we needed educated people in certain places, education was a measure of intelligence. People were educated then because they were intelligent. They are not intelligent because they are educated. Are we communicating?
Yes.
So when you have people who are capable of educating themselves thus far, then it follows automatically that they are intelligent people, and you can bring anything new onto their table and they will learn it and work with it immediately and proceed with it. But these days, kuna hizi degrees za harambe. Mtu alipata D- or C-, anakuja anapigia degree harambe, he sleeps with water on his legs until he gets that. Then he comes to compete people.
Now, if somebody got a strong E-,
Yes.
What? A strong?
A strong E-, oh sorry, so maybe a D-, whatever the degree, the rank is.
Yes.
But the guy says that I must get a bachelor's degree. So he goes through the bridging process and eventually gets the degree. Are you not supposed to give that person credit?
What was the problem that made him get that D-? Actually, you see, in early education, that is the time when people are not interfered with by anything. The intellect that you use to learn and pass exams is natural, and that is you.
Maybe this fellow was in a place where he interacted with jiggers, so he couldn't go to school nicely. Maybe there was cattle rustling, all these kind of things.
Of course, there are a few such situations. Did you hear that? A few such situations. They are minor. In society, when you have that, we call it the normal curve. We have a few people at the very end, extreme, both ends, extreme. I studied statistics more than anything else. So you will always find, even when you take beans and you throw in a sack and throw into the sea, when you go home, you'll find one bean remaining in the sack. They are always extreme situations. So in the intelligence spectrum, you will find the people who are intelligent are many, very intelligent are few, idiots are also few. They are almost becoming apes. And they are geniuses. So that's how it is. But where people are just intelligent are very many.
So although you're describing human beings who are idiots as they're about to become apes.
There are those ones. No, even with idiots alone, there's also a spectrum there. There are idiots who are close to being intelligent, and then there are bad ones who are becoming apes. And even beyond that, you go until you get primitive creatures.
Now, Noordean, Odoyo says that when you've got superior academic qualifications, you expect very positive outcomes. But universities in Kenya that are run by vice chancellors, all of them professors, are having issues. So shouldn't we expect universities in Kenya, because they've got the highest concentration of these PhDs, to be dancing to the bank instead of wailing to the bank?
Let me tell you something before you come in. If you look at the PhD holders and you collect them in a room, say, take just 100, you'll find only 3 were A students from the beginning coming. Most of those people are average. What were BD? The very sharp people rarely take education very seriously. Some of these big organizations like Microsoft, Apple, and you will find Elon Musk and all of them, you will find they left school early before they even went to far. Not because they were stupid, but they were seeing more than ordinary people saw.
So Noordean, we don't want to ask you in which
The
category
floor
you
is
fall.
yours.
You see, the most interesting thing is, as I rightfully says, education is very important. But also, I come from a point where I believe, like you rightfully said, if you got a D and some things happen in life, makosa hufanyika, you know. And if, let's say, for example, at the time you're not serious with your studies and you get to a point where you want to change things, you're allowed to change your fate. Because sadly...
Yeah, you could be a late bloomer.
Yes, because sadly, you know, the sad reality of our education system is, if you fail, that's where your life ends. And we need to change that. He talks about Elon Musk, he talks about Microsoft, Bill Gates and Intel. They left school, but you see, life didn't stop there.
Yes.
Now, if you get a D here, you already know the president has a job for you. It's Nairobi River. And about housing.
You know,
sadly, you see, and we have to change that. So, as you rightfully say, yes, when we see people with good credentials, they've gone to school, they are professors, as you rightfully say, we expect some level of good stuff to come from there. But it's not the case. If you look at Moi University, we're having discussions of how it might be closed. That is a very sad discussion if we're having such a discussion, because mismanagement brought about that. So you can't shut down a university because of individuals that caused mismanagement. So what happens to those individuals?
And the mismanagement has been occasioned largely by tribalism.
Exactly. So
to syndrome.
Exactly. So we can't just let that go that way, because that is a very good university. I have so many friends who studied law in that school, right? And some others who have done other things. So I do believe that, as you rightfully say, yes, education is, as you say, it's a measure of intelligence, but there are those who have these titles. You know, if you're following Gachagua's case, there was this issue between professor and senior counsel. And then, you know, we have the senior counsel, but we also have the grandfather of law. The grandfather is Khaminwa. And that is why he was saying these titles, the SC and professor, mean nothing if they do not bring about anything on the table. You know, like he rightfully says, there are those who are A students and there are those who are BD. So he says, if you have this title and you add no value, that title is useless.
And you need to BD too.
So I don't put too much on titles, but I look at what you bring. Now we have, as you rightfully say, we have a president and deputy who are both professors. As that happens, let us not shy away from the fact that the current deputy president was the minister for interior when abductions have happened. When, for example, we have issues of extrajudicial killings.
You've stepped on his toes.
And you know me, I hit the nail on the head when we've had extrajudicial killings. And there's nothing there's nothing as a follow-up that has happened. So we need to have hard questions as to these individuals.
But then, before you finalize on that point, we've got about, I think, 77 universities in Kenya. And Kenyans have got these irrational appetites that if a university is located in Kisii, then the vice-chancellor must be a Kisii man.
Very stupid.
That if the university is located in Bondo, the vice-chancellor must be a university man. What kind of nonsense is
this? It's stupidity, you see, and it's this, the way we are. You know, we're so tribal, and it's so sad that we view things from a tribal perspective. And there's a quote that says, if you view everything from a religious point of view or a tribal point of view, your entire education system is useless. Because this Mtuwetu nonsense is what brought about this Moi University issue. And just because a university is in a certain county does not mean someone that comes from that county or speaks a language of the county must be the VC. But the sad reality is that we have demarcated this country in such a way that there are those who feel we have been marginalized, we are those who feel we are superior, and that has to change. And you see, when we, like for example, right now we talk about this broad-based government, that after removing Gachagua, we are fighting tribalism, we are fighting corruption, fighting bad governance. That is far from the truth. Let us be honest. When you get sworn in as a president of the Republic of Kenya, you do not become a president of Nairobi, Kiambu, or Uasin Gishu. You are meant to make appointments showing the face of that country. Now, if you come and when you and your DP were bosom buddies and decide 3/4 of appointments go to both of your communities, so that time it wasn't tribalism. But right now that you have this eureka moment, courtesy of having a broad-based government with Raila, now you're like, oh, by the way, now I am so patriotic, so nationalistic, it's time I open up the government. That is not true. If the Gen Z Mandama didn't happen in 25th of June, and let us be honest, Mokua, would Gachagua be deputy president today? He would be. But because it happened, now we have an epiphany moment, and oh, by the way, we are all patriots.
But you know, Odoyo doesn't come from the two communities you're talking about.
I know.
Government.
First of all, we need to be very careful about such models. This is why I like to say, whenever you see things happen, try to find out how, why, and who is behind them. First of all,
exercise your curiosity.
First of all, let's deal with this matter of abductions. I don't know why people call arrests abductions.
Including a lawyer who is a CPM.
Yes. And you see,
it is an abduction. And you see, I happen to sit in the LSK PIL committee. And so I speak from a point of where I have seen certain cases. I have seen things. So I'm speaking from a point of knowledge. So when I say the abductions, do you know there's a process of how you arrest someone?
Okay, give us the legal definition of arrest and abduction so that we proceed from a point of knowledge.
And I'll start from this. There was a case during Mandamano time where there are directions from the court that anyone that is supposed to act as a police officer must not be masked, number one. Must identify themselves when they come to arrest you, number two. Must give you their service number, number three. That is never done. And then when...
Is that what you refer to as the Miranda rights?
Yeah. When you come, for example, to me, you bangle me into a car, and then you keep me incommunicado. That in itself is wrong. And you keep shifting me from one police station to another because A, LSK is looking for you, or B, your family is looking for you. That is wrong in all measures. If someone, for example, has done something wrong, the least you do is you summon that person to a police station. You tell them to provide themselves. If they don't, then you seek warrants of arrest. All right? But if, for example, you come in cars that don't have number plates, and it's cat and mouse, where those who are following you don't know where you're going, you first hear you're in Kamukunji, kidogo you're in Stare, kidogo you're in Nyeri. That is wrong. And then when you're kept incommunicado, it's 24 hours once they arrest you. If you stay before 24, more than 24 hours, what are they trying to say at the end of the day? If there are charges, take the person to court. If there are no charges, and the worst thing is that most of these people who were arrested, for example, these cases were interesting. There's a day 109 guys were arrested and were sent to Central Police, this city court, the one in City Hall. When they were bangling in there, they were saying these people were found
littering,
drunk and disorderly. At 12 a.m. So we're asking ourselves, 12 p.m. So we're asking ourselves. So all 109 people were drinking something, going to the bashment at CBD. And when they come there, the worst thing, the DPP is never ready with charges. So you arrest someone without a charge, without any lawful reason. That in itself is an illegality.
Odoyo, Noordean has failed to...
I think he has now finished, but he didn't explain to me
the difference between
abduction and arrest. But it's okay. Whatever we are not talking to ourselves. We are talking to people out there. They have listened to what you have said. Let me tell you about this thing called abduction and arrests. And that ruling that you say the court directed. Let me tell you, sometimes our courts are becoming activists and they want to satisfy those who have gone before them. There was a gentleman who was abducted by criminals in Siaya. They went and killed him, abandoned his car near a petrol station, and dumped him in a trench. And so the police came out to look for the killers. One of them, they shot in Kisumu because he was fighting back. One of them, they chased him and he ran over a roadblock and the girlfriend was arrested. I don't know how we would handle that by what you are saying you summon. Criminals cannot be summoned and they obey those summons. In fact, they will fight back, and so you will arrest them by force. But arrest by force cannot be tantamount to an abduction. An abduction is where you take somebody against his will when he has committed no offense. But whenever a criminal is taken against his will, that is not abduction, that is an arrest. We made very many arrests during the Gen Z thing. And I believe that was the right thing to do at that point in time. When you see somebody is supposed to be having peaceful demonstrations, and in his peaceful demonstrations, he's blocking roads, he's lighting bonfires, he's pulling down fences.
And they're carrying stones.
That is not a demonstrator, he's a criminal. Even breaching the gates of parliament is not a peaceful demonstration. It is a criminal damage to public property. In any case, whatever they wanted to do, the demonstration envisaged in the Constitution does not include breaching fences, pulling down gates, and invading Parliament. It is not. And lawyers, judges, and all those people we expect to give us direction were busy telling us how we were arresting people who are doing peaceful demonstrations. And the media followed suit by every moment telling us about peaceful demonstration. There was nothing peaceful about the demonstrations we witnessed in this country since 2023, beginning with those ones of Azimio and ending with these ones of Rigathi of Gen Zs.
Now,
there were no peaceful demos. A peaceful thing must be devoid of noise, must be devoid of destruction of property, and must be devoid of assaults to anyone. None of those were devoid of those three things.
So, having elaborated captured that point,
yeah.
The other point is that when you look at the cabinet composition, when you look at the principal secretary's composition, parastatal heads, the chairman, directors, managing directors, do you actually see the face of Kenya, consistent with Chapter 6 and Article 10?
I'm very happy that you brought that one back again.
No, he raised it, so I'm just trying to buttress.
There was a list that was going around this country showing that majority of the people in government were coming from one community where the president came from. Unfortunately, from where I sit, I would have liked to see the one that was a list of other communities also. As much as you list the community of the president, you should have also listed the community of the deputy president, community of certain ministers, community of the, and so on, so that we compare. Because this ordinary holoi polloi in the streets have no idea that this country has 370 parastatals. So when you give him a list with only one community and they seem like they exist in 67 parastatals, knowing that when they go to one parastatal, they take the CEO because the CEO comes from the president's community. They go to another, they take the chair because the chair comes from the president's community. They go to another, they take the corporation secretary so in the end, they come up with 67. And the ordinary folk cannot analyze that and see that in airport, even though the CEO was Luo, they only went for the chair. Mm-hmm. And in another one, they only went for now the CEO and left the chair because the chair was coming from elsewhere. If you want comparison to say these people are more in government than this, list all the communities. I had asked some researchers to do the list. When they came up with the list of those who come from Mount Kenya in this government of President William Ruto, it was double those who come from the president's own community.
Now,
and yet the people who are propagating this thing were people that were from the mountain. So we have to be fair. If you want to compare that this community is too many in government, bring all communities, list them together, and let's see. And also explain to you why. Also, you must remember that in forming government, it is the winning political formation, the winning political alliance that forms government. But services must be provided to all Kenyans equally and equitably.
Now, talking about Mount Kenya, would you say the impeachment of Mr. Rigathi Gachagua is the end of an era?
Of course, the end of Rigachi's era. Rigathi is I think he's just still trying to fade off honorably. But it is going to be very difficult for him to play politics in Kenya going forward.
What are these
because
options for
the people of Mount Kenya want their future. They want to be given hope. So if you give them somebody as their leader, will that person rise to the highest office in the land? If he will not rise, then they have no business moving with him. They will take one, probably a younger one, probably a more brilliant one, who is going to promise them a future in the seat of power. So that Rigathi has not looked at. He thinks he can still be the kingpin of the mountain when he is not capable of vying for the presidency or anything else. Somebody will come and promise the people of the mountain the future. And that person has come. He is Kithure Kindiki.
Now, still talking about Kithure Kindiki before Noordean comes in, yesterday the Nyeri governor had a function, and the members in that room behaved in a manner suggesting that he should now fill the vacuum. They said the absence of Rigathi Gachagua has created a vacuum, so they're asking the Nyeri governor to fill the vacuum. One would have expected those Mount Kenya MPs, the Mount Kenya governors, to ask Professor Kithure Kindiki to fill that vacuum?
Let me tell you, they are making two mistakes there. First of all, you must remember, you look at Rigathi Gachagua and Mutahi Kahiga. They are birds of a feather. Mutahi Kahiga came to power after the death of his own boss, the governor. And I think Rigiji was really admiring that. I'm not saying he wanted to kill the president, but he would have liked the president to get out whichever way so that he walks into that seat without spending a cent. Coming back to Mount Kenya, if we are going to be united as a country, we must share the resources of that country, including public appointments and services, equally and equitably. If Mount Kenya is going to remain united, it cannot be united for only the West. It must be united for Mount Kenya East and Mount Kenya West. It is now an opportunity after Kibaki and Uhuru for the Mount Kenya East also to have a bite at the cherry.
Now, Noordean, as Kevin settles down, the matter pending at the High Court and the Court of Appeal, is this what lawyers you refer to as an exercise in futility or an academic venture? Because Professor Kithure Kindiki is already president. In theory, is it possible to kick him out of office?
If I was trying to make the president happy, I told him, umekanyaga apumui, umemaliza.
Amekanyaga shingo.
Amekanyaga shingo apumui. But in being the advocate that I am, and in being real, I will tell you that one, if you heard when the conservatory orders were being lifted, they were saying there's an indication that in case something is found, the AG gave an undertaking as to make sure that whatever the court decides will be implemented. That in itself, I already know those from the side of the government, their defense will be like, this already has been overtaken by events. I know that is what they're going to say. And in playing the devil's advocate to Gachagua, not that he pays my legal fees or anything.
That one we not know for a fact.
He doesn't. He doesn't. Because even last year when he was saying the things he was saying, when I was appearing anywhere else, I would say whatever he's saying is uncalled for. So in playing the devil's advocate, I will tell you this. For those who are saying that his political life is dead, suffer the truth. And this is what I'll tell you. Because when you look
but what are the consequences of impeachment?
Exactly. I'm getting to that. You see, he's in court in two fronts. Number one, he was trying to prevent Kindiki from being sworn in. And that is why he sought conservatory orders, which were lifted, and they have gone ahead and sworn in Kindiki and gave us a holiday that we really didn't need anyway. Number two...
But the holiday is consistent with the act.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Number two, I was just being mischievous. Number two, he's in court because he wants to remove the impeachment tag, what Sonko has been trying to do, and he has failed to do.
And YT2.
And YT2. Yeah. And in arguing his reason as to why he feels that his impeachment was not right, he is going to talk about his rights, fundamental rights, under the Constitution, which he feels were violated. You get? And one of them is that a right to be heard. And when his counsels came and told Senate that he is sick and he's seeking a day or two to come back to court, from where I was, the lawyers I was with, we say this is a trap. They should not impeach him without him being there. They should accord him a chance to be heard. Kawira Mwangaza, in one of the many cases she went to court after the impeachment, one of the reasons why the first impeachment failed was because she said that she was not given a chance to be heard. That was one of her reasons.
No, in a prior conversation, in a prior conversation, Owidi, who is not a medical practitioner, indicated that in fact Rigathi was not sick. But again, another issue that you may need to address is, then what was the role of his lawyers if they could not represent him in his absence?
Now, this is the thing. You see, it says you have to appear. You get it? You are supposed to be there. And you see, as a lawyer, for example, if we go to court and I'm representing you, and I don't have instructions, I can't move forward. That's why when you go to court and you say, are you ready to proceed? Yes, I do not have instructions to proceed.
You can't act in the best interest of your client.
You see, I need instructions. That is why when you
act in best interest.
Yes, that is why when you come and see me, the first thing you get is an instruction note. What do you want me to do? And as we proceed slowly and surely, as the case goes on, you give me instructions. So when they said we do not have instructions at this point, and Kingi was very smart, seeing that he's a lawyer, he said the deadline is Saturday, which also, if you ask me, we need to interpret the Constitution, because the deadline of 10 days is only in the committee. But the same Constitution is quiet on the plenary. If you look at the articles of the Constitution, it says the 11-member committee has 10 days to come up with a report. But if they decide to go the plenary way, there is no deadline.
But also, one would argue, I'm not a lawyer, but the plenary is a committee of the whole.
No. You see, that's different because you see, the constitution is expressed in its wording. So at the end of the day, he was smart and he said, I give him up to Saturday, but I leave it to the House.
So what happens if the matter is that undetermined on the 7th of August 2027? I'm asking the matter for Rigathi Gachagua.
Yeah.
It will go all the way to the Supreme Court. What if the Supreme Court pronounces itself on the 7th of August 2027?
Well, now you see, this is the most interesting thing. You see, the Constitution does not speak of a scenario where he can be reinstated. That's a sad reality. Now, when the AG gives an undertaking and says that if the swearing in of Kindiki will be found to be unconstitutional, they will act on the same direction from the court. That is being mischievous because there is nowhere, there's no place where the Constitution says you can't reinstate him. So what will happen is that the court will say this has been overtaken by events. As he rightfully said, he might get damages, that is monetary. Number 2, his benefits might be reinstated. Number 3, he might be given a chance or a second bite at the cherry in his political life. If at all the procedure is found to have infringed on his rights, fundamental rights under the Constitution. And that is what I'm sure he's going to try and focus on. But as they were trying, they were being mischievous because you remember that those in government were saying they are dilly-dallying. So now the person who has urgency in this case to be determined is Gachagua.
All of a sudden.
Yes, because the more it stays in court, the more it ruins his chances of forming a party, starts to campaign. Those from the other side don't have any hurry right now because they already have a substantive DP in office. So now, even if, let's say he wins, I'm sure they will appeal. It will go all the way to the Supreme Court. That's why you see there are those councils who are saying this will go out to 2026. You get, and I think he mentioned that 2026, 2027.
He didn't want to give the name.
The beauty about it, the beauty about Gachagua being in court is that we are testing our constitution. And I like this because when it comes to the impeachment of governors, we'll use this as well because members of county assembly cannot just sit somewhere and say, oh, Governor Jachaka Nasisi, we must impeach him. We must find a mechanism where we also deal with these issues of impeachment of governors. Because in as much as we say that these things are a political process, we just can't come up with the political process just because someone isn't in good books as the party leader.
Now, talking about counties and devolution, that is where Kevin comes in. He's been consulting his constitution, and he's not a lawyer. Kevin Karibu, I understand you are stuck in traffic, but the king says better late than never.
Oh, yeah, precisely. Today is a Sunday and is a family day.
Yes.
So family comes first. We were out somewhere and coming back was a little bit troublesome.
You had an issue with your helicopter. We understand.
Yeah.
You faced the challenge.
The owner came for it and we had to beg to be allowed to spare some few minutes. But thank you so much. And as rightfully said, it's better late than never. Yeah.
So the Noordean here has been giving us a beating on matters of law, but I see you've got a constitution.
Yes, my
so
good friend.
that would be of great help. We've been grappling with several issues, but we'd like your perspectives. Yeah. The first one is that in Botswana, the Domoboko, as soon as I was pronounced the winner, the following day his hand was on the Bible and the Constitution, and tomorrow is taking off. It's 7:30. But in Kenya, we have this elaborate. We've got an act, Assumption of Office Act, and Noordean told us that it was supposed to cure a president being sworn in the middle of the night. So that is the first thing that we need your perspective.
Yeah.
Then the second perspective, Odoyo has told us the composition of the cabinet, principal secretaries and parastatal heads reflects the face of Kenya, and is consistent with Chapter 6 and Article 10 as captured in that constitution.
Yeah.
We'd like to get your perspective as well. And then number 3, that Rigathi Gachagua his impeachment marks the end of an era. ERROR.
Wow.
Let me start with the last one, Dismus. And I like the phonetics around ERROR and ERA.
Yeah, you know English is my third language, so I just want to be sure that it's precise.
And I'm asking myself, what is the error? So, for instance, what is the ERA and what is the ERROR? And if I was to go further to probably focus on the ERROR era, is to ask what era is it? And looking a little further in terms of the allegations, particularly on the process of the impeachment of the former deputy president, I ask myself, was it necessary? Was it worth it? Did it meet constitutional threshold? Did it really warrant all this time? Did it warrant all this investment? And my answer to all this is almost a no. Now, to start with, for instance, you look at the allegations that were made on the former deputy president, of course, taking note of his appeal issues. And you can easily tell that we have had some worse processes in this country in terms of allegations, whether it's on corruption, whether it's on misuse of public resources, whether it's on misuse of public office. And the manner in which the former deputy president was treated, in my view, did not meet even what we have seen in the past, and particularly the absence of constitutional institutions that are supposed to met over and preside over some of these issues. For example, EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Why was a commission being brought in at the last minute? And you remember that this is happening at a point in time when Parliament has already executed its responsibility by the Constitution, and the manner in which that execution was also done is quite wanting, in the sense that does it set a proper precedence for future misleadership or misprocesses like what we saw happening with Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua. And so in my view, of course, good things that can come out of this. For example, now we can begin to fast track the process of the national legislation on public participation, because again, it is expected that Parliament publishes a report on public participation on national concerns like what we saw. That report has not been published, and remember that a number of people still grapple with the findings of the public around the impeachment of the deputy president. And so we are hoping that the manner in which this process was fast-tracked and moved very quickly, that in the same manner we can see our representatives coming up to be able to also pass the public participation bill and then act upon its assent, because that is really quite critical. And Dismus, you know that we also find ourselves in a box where we saw, so you put priority of the citizens and indeed the interests of the political class. And as at the point in time when all these were going on, we saw engagements with Adani. And so you ask yourself, which one was supposed to come first? Now we are still talking about SHA, and I've heard one of the leaders from Kenya Kwanza saying that now because Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua has gone, governors will now have an opportunity to understand SHA better. And I ask myself, is he the one who really stopped and stalled that the process? And my answer again is no. So whether ERROR or ERA, I think that is really boxed in a political process, and therefore does not, in my view, qualify to have met constitutional threshold for impeachment of a deputy president. Remember that we probably have some losses in this process, in the sense that we did not spare a lot of time to underscore what this threshold of an impeachment would look like, or what really is the magnitude of what an impeachment of a deputy president would look like. So that even in terms of the allegations, indeed there were 11 at the National Assembly, and the Senate approved upon the votes by now narrowing down to 5 allegations. But then you ask yourself, so how do we get to really understand what happened to the 4? And particularly because this is the first time Kenyans are undertaking a process of impeachment of a DP. And so in my view, there would have been a much more greater investment, like for example, what we saw in National Assembly, buying 2 pages of 2 daily widely read newspapers. That's a lot of money. And we don't see similar investments in important concerns that also require public interest. So that, of course, it's also the law that for you to undertake a public participation process, Of course, Article 35, and even within the County Governments Act, you have to, publish and gazette this kind of concerns. And this is the first time I think we have seen that degree of investment. We don't see that happening in other processes. And I think that those are some of the lessons that we are, of course, learning.
Now, but Kevin, you raised very fundamental issues.
Yes.
Still sticking with the impeachment, and so the way it's done in other jurisdictions.
Yes.
The first thing is you establish, if you want to kick out somebody, the first thing you do is to establish whether or not you've got the numbers.
Yes.
Then once you have the numbers, is when you look for the reason to present to the public.
Yes.
Now, it's very clear, and lawyers would say that it's now common ground, that the 11 reasons presented to the National Assembly and Senate are not the actual reasons as to why it was kicked out.
Correct.
And impeachment is the cumulative opinions of members of the National Assembly and Senate. So even the issues you are raising about EACC shouldn't even come in.
Yes.
Because we rely on the wisdom of the member of the National Assembly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the senator.
And yes.
So there's a chance that there are many things they were told in the cover of darkness that we wouldn't know.
In camera.
Yeah. And also the reason why impeachment has to be done in a hurry, that's a very sensitive issue on national security.
Yeah.
For instance, the obtaining situation today is, as some said, you had a president, we didn't have a deputy, and then you got the Speaker of the National Assembly, and you don't have IBC. The High Court said that these constitutional officers are so critical, you cannot equate impeachment to the normal process of what you are talking about, public participation, that you need to fast track it so that you have the National Assembly sitting on a Friday or up to the middle of the night. And I've seen the former president in trying to play populist politics back in the villages saying, ile sheria ya kahawa pia mpitishe vile mlipitisha hiyo yangu.
Yeah.
So there is that concept there.
And you see, Dismus, that is where the error double R comes in. Because we have over-invested in the political process as opposed to mechanisms that are supposed to help grow the constitution. I remember that even up to before, during, and after this impeachment debate, we had members, and some of us are friends with those senators and members of National Assembly. Those are our MPs. And some of them would easily tell you that sisi tutapiga kura. And you ask them, sasa mutapigia nini kura? And they're like, sisi tunangoja hiyo kura. Lazima ende nyumbani.
They don't even know the content.
Exactly. And this is not very different from other processes. For instance, the finance bill, where some members even went to public rallies and said, sisi tutapitisha bill, hatujui nasema nini. And that is where the error lies in.
But you remember some stage we were told that if Raila Odinga has gone through a document and he has formed a position, who are we?
So that is where the problem again lies, because we are trying to grow the constitution through erroneous mechanisms and using probably the wrong people, like some of our members of Parliament, National Assembly and Senate, now to underscore the threshold of very important dispensations like impeachment of a deputy president. But again, the beauty of it is that now we have tested that particular article of the Constitution, 147, 148, 149, and 150. And now we know that even if we wanted to impeach a president today, that article and aspect of constitutionalism has been tried and tested. But then we go back to asking ourselves, did it still meet constitutional threshold? Did we act politically? Or indeed, in fact, it even baffles me that at the end of the day, we still found ourselves at the courts. Because constitutionally, again, the courts are supposed to help in terms of access to justice and interpretation. So we are looking forward to how far this will go so that we still get grounded interpretations on some of the critical aspects that we saw coming up from the impeachment of Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua.
Yeah, I can see Owidi is doing press-ups and he's been taking notes furiously.
Yes.
But you haven't addressed the issue of the swearing in.
Yes.
The one for Kithure, one was, fast, effective, efficient. The levels of accuracy was just shocking. And the one of Botswana.
You see, Kenya has learned from some very painful pasts. And I agree with Noordean that especially from 2007, 2008, we felt that it was not right for President, Kenya's ambassador #1, to be sworn in at night. And so we asked ourselves, and of course Kenyans, is the question around how would we want this to be done? And interestingly, now we have a mechanism, a procedure, a framework that guides how we swear in our president and the deputy president and even other leaders.
Noordean is unhappy with the public holiday.
That is up to him, but then he can also petition and say that, yeah, this is a waste of time. I want to appeal on this act on public holidays for the CS. But I think it is a good practice. The only issue that I probably could have compared to the Botswana one is extravagance and the degree of wastage. Did we really have to, despite the public holiday, Wakili, did we really have to get to KICC and have people travel the whole night to come over? Was it really worth it? Did we have to push people up, left, right, center to ensure that we have this fanfare, this pompous party that we are having? And so you ask yourself, again, going back to prioritization of citizens and indeed the selfish interests of the political class. And so I'm looking forward to probably even going down to the amounts that we spent to just have Mheshimiwa Professor Kithure Kindiki sworn in, and I would have said, yeah, similar to Botswana, just get into a boardroom, and as long as,
if you give Noordean instructions, you can petition the High Court tomorrow and you'll get to know the details.
Please proceed.
Of the man.
Yeah, because I think it would have been just easier for us to fast track the way we have seen the process fast tracked. And I don't think that Professor Kithure Kindiki is this gentleman who wants to have this extreme extravagance and pomp.
But when you talk about extreme extravagance,
yes,
at the KCC function, what was extreme and what was extravagant?
You see, from what we see happening against what is planned for. For instance, the costs related to
the red carpet,
the grounds. Of course, KICC we can probably imagine that is government, but looking at PPP concerns, public-private partnership issues, noting some of the challenges that KICC as an investment of the country has had. Of course, issues of somebody will argue that we raised some revenue when people traveled at night to come for the function. But in my view, I still have this.
Kevin, I didn't see anything extravagant because when the VIPs were sitting under the sun, they were sweating profusely. So I didn't see any air conditioning, high-end tents, so that you can say there was I didn't see them with water or even
we are waiting
whiskey.
To see how much was spent on that function against citizens' serious concerns. For example, that some people cannot be able to pay for their health needs.
So you don't swear in a president because you want to
get into a boardroom like where they were to greet our leaders and just the Botswana style.
But the act says that this thing has to be done in public
in public, and then we have the glare because even that public is not. Once you have the gazettement as KICC, the details of public are not shared.
It can be a boardroom
it can be with all the lights of the cameras.
But somebody will still petition say that this thing.
Then now through that,
are you criticizing it for a sport or?
Then through that, let me not go into the criticism, but through that we get to break down what this public could mean. Because, for instance, somebody would wake up, Kevin Osido will wake up and say, I want to swear myself as the people's president, But of course, if there is no assumption of office, then that is now not legal. It is not what the Constitution expects. And so the beauty of it, Dismus, I believe, is that, yes, we are making certain mistakes, errors, but there is quite of a growth and progress that we continue to fill in, even in the haters that we see.
Owidi, you've been doing press-ups.
Yeah, for very long. But first of all, this matter of extravagance, I think it was just to fill the gaps that you find something to say. Because when we were swearing in President Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto twice, and President William Ruto and Gachagua, what we did the other day for the DP is not even a tenth of what we did those days. So for a DP, who is second in the organogram after the president, I think that was much less than what we expected. We literally sat in the sun. There was nothing really worth it. In fact, those people who are sitting there, the only thing that we could say we are lost is working time. But one thing you need to know, taking office by a president or a deputy president is the biggest thing that can happen in this country. People are even complaining that the speed with which things were done, forgetting that in this country, the constitution demands that the president, if there is any petition, it has to be done within only 14 days. The presidency is a very big office, very crucial. You can't compare it with the office of health minister, or you can't compare it anywhere there. So what happened there was much, much less than what I expected. And the issue that has been spoken here about Rigathi. Rigathi was given an opportunity to be heard. He feared a cross-examination, so he ran to hospital. His lawyers came and told us he's been unwell and gone to hospital, but they never even came back with any proof. So this case will...
There was no medical report.
They did not come with proof and medical reports. In fact, there should have been a case where the Senate should have also sent a medical expert to the hospital to find out what's going on. Because the Rigathi I saw standing there talking politics from hospital when he should have been talking health and advising people not to stress themselves too much. So you knew. Next, I want to plug in this idea of whether impeachment of Gachagua was worth it. The presidency of a country, nothing can be as important. And those who knew Gachagua's mistakes know it was worth it. And I don't know why you want to analyze politics, but you cannot analyze events, statements, and actions of politicians. If you saw what Rigathi did with his travel to Mombasa, starting to document how he traveled to Mombasa, to depict the president as punishing him, as persecuting him.
When he was about KQ.
If you listened to the deputy president talk in Mombasa on the day Parliament was breached, you would sympathize with the president if he really had a deputy or not. Even if, say, he didn't know what was going to happen and he accidentally found himself in Mombasa, the best thing would have to take a chopper back to Nairobi in solidarity with the president. And if that were not even possible, he should have only said and enforced what the president has said. But the worst is when he went on radio stations to thank the Gen Zs for what they did. That was the height of it. But that was not all. We believe that the Gen Z issue was organized and planned by people he knew. When he had declared himself the kingpin of Mount Kenya, and then Mount Kenya went to Limuru 3 and talked things you would not talk of a sitting president, otherwise you'd all be jailed for treason if it were those days. And then he said nothing about it. He didn't even tell them it was wrong. And when his lieutenants were all there, it was very painful. But about paying him damages, I don't think he's going to win that case to warrant him any damages. In any case, if we are to pay him damages, we'll only pay him for the salaries. You know, allowances are not paid if you didn't evaporate because, yeah.
Let me say something.
So I'm going to get you to say that. In fact, you owe me something because you said that the courts once ruled that, once directed, that those who are going to arrest people must not wear hoods. Yeah. Let me tell you, when we are arresting terrorists, we must wear hoods. That is why we have policemen in plain clothes, policemen officially in unmarked cars. Sometimes you are dealing with people who are more dangerous than the whole police force put together. When you have people who set whole building, when you go into this town and you see a whole building, 10 floors that was set on fire by people who call themselves Gen Zs, they were not Gen Zs. In such circumstances, you don't know who will come to Salimia Wewe as a police officer. So you may need to work undercover. Undercover police is an official thing that happens in this country.
Only that,
in the matter of the Senate and the National Assembly, those are political assemblies. They are not courts of law. If you want this threshold of proof that you are talking about here to happen in impeachment, then we would not need to take these impeachments to the National Assembly or the Senate. We would take them to the courts with the mistakes, those 9, and we use chapter 6 to take them through that. But if we opt to use a political avenue, then the threshold is much lower. It is the opinion, it is the wisdom of those people sitting there which is supposed to reign and prevail, not that kind of proof that we used to prove the offenses committed by criminals beyond reasonable doubt. Here, there is no beyond reasonable doubt. It is
Mokua, let me just
the threshold of, by the way, the threshold of impeachment in this country is too high for my liking.
It's just numerical.
Look, first of all, it starts, the National Assembly brings a third to say you are worth impeaching. Then they come with supermajority to impeach you. Then they take you to another assembly, which is actually a subset of this one, and then impeaches you by another supermajority. And you still want to go to court to remain in office for that time. We are wasting time.
Noordean has been also doing press ups like you did.
Noordean, come.
I'll go straight to two things that at the center of my heart. Number one, issues to do with he says the police and during the arrest during Mandamano. I have been present during day one of those protests. FiresideKE. There was a video the first day when people were arrested. There's a video that went viral at Central Police Station saying we want the OCS. I don't know if any of you guys saw that video. I'm at the center of that video.
We must have seen it.
I'm at the center of that video. And the reason why we were saying we want the OCS is because day one of the demonstrations, there was no looting, there was no theft, there was no buying of anything. People, and actually Kimani Chungwa made fun of them. Wako na iPhone, Uber, na KFC. It was so peaceful that they would, even the guys from the shops would shield them from police.
Right? Actually, I understand they offered them food, water.
So the reason why we went to Central is because we had information that, and it ended up being true, that some who were underage, 16, 17, had been arrested. And some are not even part and parcel of those demonstrations. And that is why we went to court. There's another decision from court. In that, the police were told not to use rubber bullets, not to use live ammunition, not to use the rungus, the tear gas, and the water cannons on peaceful demonstrators. Now, here I'm talking about peaceful demonstrators. I'm not talking about anarchists or criminals.
So what we must underline is peaceful.
Yes, because I don't advocate for criminality. Then that means my entire education is a fraud, right? So the issue here is, we need to understand what makes demonstrations turn violent. And by virtue of being there day one and day two, I came to understand what causes violent demonstrations. These people had, from Java, that Java around there in town, from Java with a phone and water and a flag, they're just singing, and then you use water cannons, you use tear gas, you use rungus. These people are human beings. Of course, there will be some people will run here and there. And I came to understand that the issue is how we handle demonstrators in this country. And it goes all the way to how do we train our police officers. The problem we did in this country is that we turned the name force into service. Because bus, we have fixed the police service.
I'm also changed the uniform.
And we've changed twice now. And then we told ourselves we have the issues in the police service, we have solved them. But we need to understand what training do they undergo at Kiganjo. If you look at how the police treat the civilians, they still have this protect the crown mentality. That is why during these mandamanos, when you go to release people from Central, when I say illegal assembly, there is no law like illegal assembly. Back in the day, that was used because those who were in power were so scared to see the masses together discussing something, they felt they would be trouble because they were making the lives of the people they were supposed to take care of, they were making their life a nightmare. So we need to check what training they undergo at Kiganjo so that we remove this issue of police versus the people. They should be together because if there are criminals within us, the people should be able to assist the police. But if you have a scenario where it is the people versus the government, the people versus police, you never go anywhere. And no government succeeds by fighting its people. And that is why I talked about issues of abductions, issues of arbitrary arrests, which the court in itself had. There was evidence, And that's why we say, because if I come, I am hooded, and I pick you, Mokua, and I say, I'm taking you somewhere. Nobody knows from a police officer.
Can you use another example?
Sorry. I pick person X, all right? I pick person X, and they claim to be a police officer. And maybe I'm not, maybe I'm just a crook. And you've seen the issues of femicide going on right now. Someone just picks someone and say, mimi ni polisi, nasi polisi. That's why the court is adamant that introduce yourself, your name, your service number, and which police station you come from. That is how we should move as a country. I am not saying that I am advocating for criminality. That one aside. Number two, there is something you asked him about whether the appointments that are there right now show the face of the country.
Of course they don't.
When you talk about Gachagua's impeachment, it's very interesting because after we impeached Gachagua, we finished corruption, we finished bad governance, we finished tribalism. thank you very much to the members of Parliament and Senate. They need a raise because they have done us a humongous task that has been ailing this country.
You are surprised
And
from
I am
1963.
surprised, and also,
you want to give them credit.
And also, as a practicing advocate, I am very surprised that the government printer is very efficient. When we need grants of letters of administration to be gazetted, we cry for months. But if Kindiki can get his in a few hours, man, that person who works there needs a raise. Number one, let me go to what I'm saying. The issue of whether we're having a scenario where the face of the country is there. You know, when you read NADCO, and I know we'll get there. When you read NADCO talks about government issues, inclusivity, national unity. You see, if you're elected, there is no crash course to teach you about inclusivity and national values. You're supposed to have them. You're supposed to have it in you that I am a president. I am not supposed to vote. I'm not supposed to appoint all people from my side who voted for me. It's supposed to be in you. Now, we don't need a report because this is the problem. Whenever you have a crisis, draft a report. We have so many reports that we have never even implemented. TGRC is still waiting in a mayor at Moles. Nubulan report is still the same case. So you have a scenario where you're talking about our politicians are dishonest. In that Gachagua is tribal and Gachagua must go. Now that Gachagua has gone, we're having a new bread-based government that is full of inclusivity and nationalhood.
Did you say bread or?
It is bread because they're sharing government. So at the end of the day, this is what I'm saying. At the end of the day, they have been mischievous and dishonest because these are Kanu old boys. What they know is a tribal arithmetic in everything. And if you listen to what those who are coming from ODM are now saying, that, we support the president, and in turn, he will pick one of us as DP. And you go ahead and listen to what they're saying. You look at, you can't come together as President Ruto, as Gachagua, as Musalia, as Mutua, as Kingi, as Wetangula, and say you are bringing inclusivity, but your arithmetic and sign of that agreement is tribal. And then you say, after all this, after having a tribal arrangement, we will go and be nationalistic. It is like saying we as Kenyans have two different candidates, person X and Y. Person Y has no money to bribe me for my votes, but person X bribes me. Then when person X gets into office, I expect that person to pass anti-corruption bills. How is that possible?
Now, Noordean, you've spoken about Kanu boys, and during that time we had Nyao Milk. And as a beneficiary of Nyao Milk, I registered offense.
So was I.
Oh, you had Nyao Milk.
Although I'm lactose intolerant, so was I.
Owidi, this lawyer is among the group of lawyers who've secluded, ring-fenced all the serious jobs for themselves. But he has no nice words for NADCO reports. He has no nice words for anything that President Ruto has done.
I don't think NADCO was a Ruto thing. NADCO was a Raila thing. Actually, Ruto just accepted, let NADCO go on, let them come up with something. But majority of those things that came out of NADCO, some of them are utterly illegal. They would have to be passed into law for them to be of any use to this.
But NADCO speaks to national inclusivity from a leadership perspective.
National inclusivity has been in the constitution since 2010. So there was nothing there. What is happening is that those who caused the NADCO meeting to bring the NADCO report are used to, if they want something, they don't want to go to the law route, they want to go to the street route. Do you remember, Odoyo even to fire chief executive? Instead of writing to him a letter, you go and pull him out of the office using goons, and that is how they fire them. So that one, let's not go there. But Wakili said something about the first day, people had water and mobile phones and had all that, and Uber and
hamburgers.
The organizers of the Gen Z attempted coup were luring them into believing it was a peaceful thing. This thing was planned, including experts and artificial intelligence was used here. And in the day one, people were roped in thinking, this time we have got a more peaceful form of demos. So then who is this who breached parliament? Who is this who set houses on fire?
Demonstrators.
Goons.
That time, where were the Gen Zs who were in the streets with them? Let us not be lured easily into lies and then we buy it. Let's not buy it. There's something that I don't need to let go very far. This agreement between President William Ruto and the
Kenya Kwanza Coalition
and the ANC.
Shareholders.
Those agreements were not between politicians nor communities. They were between political formations, something that is allowed in law and it happens everywhere else. So let us not talk about it being illegal. It was legal. The only thing that was illegal was that share of Rigathi, because it was shares to the mountain, shares to communities. That was utterly illegal. But agreements between political formations is correct. Then I would like to see a video of peaceful demonstrations going on in town. The ones I saw Phoenix House on fire, I saw Sunbeam Mall on fire, I saw Parliament being breached, I saw people being chased. And let me tell you, when people are organized criminal activities like the attempted Gen Z coup, they even have plans of what they will do so that they are blamed on the government. I even saw some people were saying that there were snipers on some buildings. All that was hogwash. So let us not be easily fooled by criminals who are trying to overthrow the government. And you see these days when you hear politicians and the media saying, what made the protests turn violent? They were meant to be violent from day one. And the plan was to breach Parliament, breach State House, and then say, okay, now what next? Will the president taken into custody for safety? Those are the things they planned. Then, don't judge the criminals by your standards. I have heard you talk about even your upbringing and education. Do not judge those criminals by your standards. They will do things that will surprise you. In fact, you will go to the streets believing I've carried my water and my iPhone and all. We are going to protest. Peaceful and when we finish peaceful protest, then I will get into my Uber and go home. You are just one. That other crowd is largely a crowd of criminals looking for opportunities to breach people's pockets, to steal, to loot, and to do those many things. If the traders were to tell you what they lost, you will be so shocked. But nevertheless, some of the things that we do in police force is for deterrence. For example, when I was a young man, my mother taught me that if you want to prevent the cow from straying into the maize plantation, you hide in the maize plantation and make sure it doesn't see you. But when it comes, give it a punishment. You only need to do that twice. The third time, the cow will not stray into the maize plantations. These people who are criminals within the protests, within the supposedly peaceful protest, sometimes they should not always be seeing police because they even made for themselves radios like the police. And they will instruct each other, don't go there, Karaus wako hapo, get to Koinange Street. They were doing that. So you are going to find it a cat and mouse thing, you will not deal with them. So make sure that some policemen are undercover and cannot be seen. So when they commit those funny crimes that they were committing, setting people's businesses on fire, blocking roads and stoning cars, then they find the police is right there with them and pick them up. I remember even the day that Jimmy Wanjigi was chased up to his house. In that very town, there was the media houses pointing to his car, and they showed us the weapons that were in the cars. When they got to his house, they said it's the police who planted them. But when he was being chased, he had those weapons in the car, and we saw them while he was still in town. And people went to believe that it is the police who planted those things into the car. About the efficiency of the government printer. Honestly, that is printing one paragraph a holiday. Do you need us to take days? But printing a legal report would definitely take ages because somebody has to approve it. But this one will be approved by the speaker because the speaker is the final man in any of those parliaments, whether it is Senate or National Assembly. Then it will be printed the whole way. And there is nowhere in law where it is said Kenya Gazettes must only be printed in daytime or at night or at this time like the swearing in.
I see Kevin wants to quote the Constitution once more.
Now, just to probably ask Mwalimu and Mheshimiwa Owidi to come back to Kenya.
Where is he? Is he in Utopia?
I think he is probably in somewhere.
It's got into Singapore. We're going to Singapore as Kenyans.
Because I'm saying this because we have history from various events in this country of what public order would look like. And sometimes even the inability of some of the service, whether the force or the service, but now the police service, to effectively engage with the public, because there is a mechanism through which you get to demonstrate in this country. And from point of information, I do not think that none of those demonstrations was allowed, because we had conversations on X, and some of us tuned in, some of us even shared expert advice on how to engage effectively in a peaceful, nonviolent demonstration. And in many of them, they were granted, because we have a mechanism that allows you to go to the police and sit with them and tell them that you want to demonstrate, and they allow you to.
They'll give you security.
And they give you even security, and you draw the road, the route that you want to use for very good purposes. But at the point in time when you have these peaceful demonstrations turning violent, is at the point when some rogue police officers arrive. And they arrive in they are hooded, they are masked, they are, and they begin to shoot and howl tear gas. And you ask yourself, but was it really necessary? And what we have not done to move this conversation to fast track it, Dismus, is to have what I would call police accountability at two levels. One is the individual police officer. For example, we have videos and images of some of them who are taped, some of them who are photographed. And we have institutions like the National Police Service Commission, we have the National Police Service, we have IPOA, we have Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which is a constitutional commission under chapter 15. And so why can't we see a proper engagement of these institutions trying to do this thing that Mwalimu Owidi is calling deterrent and preventive measures? We have not seen police officers being arraigned to undertake personal and individual accountability on why they howled tear gases, on why they shot people. We have not seen that happening. Number two, even up to the level of the National Security Council, which is chaired by His Excellency the President, where the Inspector General of the Police actually sits, we have not seen that institutional accountability. And by so saying is, going beyond the number of Kenyans who have been killed, we need to know how many police officers have been questioned. What is the government of Kenya doing to really underscore this thing we are calling police accountability, particularly building on some of the good things that have come up, like what I would call security sector reforms, because we have made some very good progresses, including even in the manner in which we train our police officers. It is no longer that very abrasive public police.
Kifua.
Kifua, These guys wako na bendera hapa bandage called utumishi kwa wote. And that is what the security sector reforms have been able to do. That is what Kenyans want to see happening. And the only way we can be able to instill that is to be able to fast track that progress within institutions, so that we do not see, for instance, an acting IG being summoned by the courts and you ignore summons. So what happened to contempt of, of court and all these things is a bad precedent which should not be praised. It should not be glorified. It should not be given room, especially in the wake of the kind of the constitution that we have right now. Mwalimu spoke about terrorism, and I have I've worked with county governments, all the 47 of them, through the Office of the President, through an agency called the National Counterterrorism Center, to help the counties to put in place what is called a county action plan to prevent and counter violent extremism among the youth and other groups. And there is nowhere you will expect that a common police officer will go to arrest a terrorist. So I agree with him. Only that when it comes to terrorism, we have a very clear unit that is called
ATPU.
Anti-Terror Police Unit that is allowed by law, and even before they invade, the NSC has to sit, and the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, by virtue of working under the presidency, has a direct link to the president to tell him, by the way, we have reports, you need to work with the CS of Interior because Westgate is going to be bombed, and so we need to do XYZ and all that. And then special officers would be sent, but in a mechanism where Kenyans are demonstrating, and the OCS of the region has given them, has okayed the notice, and has even given them police escort, where sometimes we even see police outriders and these nine-eye, we of the police, you know. We don't expect that through that mechanism, Kenyans will be killed. Because when you leave your house to go and fight for some of this positive progress, and I thank the president even for agreeing with the Gen Zs, because through that, we saw him withdrawing the finance bill of 2023-2024. We saw him actually sending home his cabinet. It means that to a greater extent, he agreed with a number of these things. But where is the point of departure, where now we see the inability of accountability of institutions to be able to tell us why Kenyans are being killed, and particularly why abductions are still happening up to now? Why would Maverick, I hear, has been picked somewhere between Kenya and a neighbor country, and you ask yourself, was it necessary? Why should that happen? Isn't it right that the Director General of NIS should be able to know where any Kenyan, as long as a report has gone out, that Kevin Osido is missing, or Dismus, or even Mwalimu here, and Kenyans have cried over it. The same way it happens in other jurisdictions, that the life of a single American, for example, is so important to that country because you do not know who you are taking away from the country, what kind of innovation he or she can come up with to be able to build that country. So yes, we have made great progress, and we are asking Kenya Kwanza government to build on that progress. Whether it was the impeachment of the DP, the former DP that was stalling these processes, again, like I've heard people saying, we are looking forward to seeing whether now Professor Kithure Kindiki, who has greatly presided over these issues that we are talking about, would really give us that kind of a positive sense.
As they say, that time is not on our side. Noordean, CPM, please give us your closing remarks and make them brief.
Brief, okay. One, I'll just want to raise something. You talked about IPOA. By virtue of being... or rather, as LSK, as it was active in these maandamanos, we came to realize that IPOA suffers from something called, it has no funds. It's not well-funded, IPOA. And that is why I think it is the way it is, because there are those who went there to give their accounts, and they were being told to bring evidence. You bring evidence, and the same is not looked into. And that's why the sad reality is that there are photos of those police officers who are engaged in these acts of violence towards the citizens, and nothing has happened to them. And that is why I talk about the training these police officers undergo. He spoke about going to visit the OCS and telling him or her that, oh, we are going to have demonstrations. The singular problem we understood is that they still believe that notification is seeking permission. The law grants me that right to demonstrate. So when I come to give you a notification, it's not for you to tell me whether I do it or not.
You're not seeking authorization.
I'm coming there to inform you so that you plan yourself and you give me security. That's all. So they have to work, because you remember, they were saying there will be no demonstrations. We've started, have you suspended the constitution? What do you mean there will be no demonstrations? Under what law? You get? And that is a problem. So we need to change how they view themselves away from this protect the crown. Because if you look at, for example, because he's talking about accountability, there is a K24 journalist who was shot. To date, nobody knows who shot her, which police officer shot her. There's nothing that has happened. And that is a sad reality. So was she also throwing stones? She was just covering the happenings. And it's a sad reality. And now you have the person who was in charge of that docket, who's the DP, without any answers. And when we raise that, you might be seen, oh, you hate the government. There is no singular individual who wants the government to fail. When you ask questions, it doesn't come from a point of malice. You just have questions that need to be answered. Also, before I finish, he talked about the NADCO, and he said that, for example, the president is not in this NADCO. We have to be honest as a citizen. You remember the president sending Wetangula a recommendation in Senate. The president is on record during campaign saying that hawezi kubali BBI, he doesn't listen to reggae. He listens to Solomon Mkubwa. So this is reggae part 2, but now this reggae does not have a beat. You get? So, and we have to be honest. And that is the dishonesty amongst our leaders is what ails this country. Because you can't move forward unless we kill dishonesty. Because when you talk about, you say Gachagua went to Mombasa, he was showing that he's been mistreated. Gachagua learned from the best. Because Ruto used to show that Uhuru is mistreating him. The sympathy vote is what Gachagua is looking for. He learned from the master. He's going with it. You look at Gachagua, for example, the way he carries himself. when he airs a different press conference, Ruto used to do that again. When Uhuru would talk, Ruto would talk as well. So the dishonesty in our leaders is what ails us. Unless we change that, we'll never move forward as a country. And I believe now that they're talking about this new Kenya, this new Kenya that they're selling us, I feel like they're selling us some GNLD, they used to call that thing called AM Global. That thing they used to say, car achievers.
Indeed, you're naming brands that we may be sued, and as a lawyer, you'll escape unhurt.
No. You know the sales point of selling you something. Like, let me use a good example. During BBI, there were things called incentives. Vijanas do 7 years, tax-free, all those things. But the real gist was amend the constitution to suit some goals. That's the same thing as NADCO. As rightfully says, came from the other side. That's why they wanted to bring the office of leader of opposition. And the president felt, if you're bringing that on, I'll bring the office of the prime cabinet secretary. So he's in it as well. That's why I talk about the dishonesty. So moving forward as a country, I do believe that, one, we have a scenario where the country is not moving at the right place, because when you have instances where people air their views, freedom of expression, he just talked about AOCO, which is very sad. If you air your views, and if someone feels that is defamatory, if someone feels that, it is true. Let me tell you, you see, one day, today you might be on this side of the law where you're enjoying. Another day the shoe will be on the other leg. You see, the issue is, if you feel someone has defamed you, take them to court. But this issue of people being incommunicado, people missing, we cannot allow that. Because if we agree to move that as a country, then we have a scenario where we're like a police state. Did you see, he talked about Kindiki's swearing in. Why did we have that contingent? Did you see how it was? It's like they were anticipating some attack. That's not how we should be as a country.
You've converted 3 minutes to 3 hours.
That's the problem of being a lawyer. You submit.
I think I cannot make you
Kevin,
in charge of security.
You're 1.5 minutes.
If you did not anticipate anything wrong in the Gachagua thing.
Wait just a moment. Let Kevin have his 1.5 minutes uninterrupted.
Yeah, so NADCO has some good proposals. Unfortunately, the degree of, hastiness in the process is wanting. Only one out of I think there are 9 laws that were proposed, 9 bills.
Yeah, the one for IBC.
Yeah, the one for IBC, and it was courtesy of the Gen Z and the Kenyan demonstrations, particularly around the call for Kenyans to recall their leaders. And the president made that promise, and he's been able to assent to the IEBC bill. So the pace at which, again, if you compare certain things that are of the politician's selfish interests against national good, because within the IEBC, the NADCO recommendations is also a law to strengthen impeachment of governors. And we would therefore be hoping that is supposed to be such a priority issue, particularly given the degree at which we see impeachments coming up. So you ask yourself, but what is this thing that is happening? Of course, we have seen concerns with the now fast-tracking, like the bill on term limits and public participation process. And you ask yourself, was it even part of the NADCO? And so this political goodwill that Kenyans expect out of processes like NADCO, I think, is missing. And this really goes to the president to be able to ensure that as part of his legacy, he helps Kenyans to really heal out of some of these concerns. For instance, why do we have to shake hands after every election? So NADCO needs to be reorganized, restarted. Of course, the time frames elapsed, I think, over one year and a half ago. But we need to look at some of the positive, elements or the silver linings. Number 2 is, in my view, I do not think that Professor Kithure Kindiki will answer all the governance questions in this country. In fact, if you look at his constitutional roles, he's only but an assistant to the president. And even for former deputy president, I didn't see anything bad that he did around the executive order on what the president expected him to assist him over, because President William Ruto did an express executive order to empower his deputy to assist him. But on the issues that went to the courts, we didn't see anyone talking about those concerns. And so Professor Kithure Kindiki, Kenyans should not imagine that is going to lower the cost of fuel, that is going to ensure that power does not keep fluctuating in Siaya, and particularly in Rarieda, where I come from, that there is going to be added ugali on the table. The law, again, is clear around what is expected to do. So this of zealous expectation that now we have made it, we have sent him back, where he came from, and we have a new fresh blood and breed. With time, we will get to know the weaker links within Kenya Kwanza government and the stronger points. And so we need to look at how the government can be able to consider ease of doing business, how we strengthen public-private partnerships and forgo corruption and cartelism in procurement processes of government. Counties must work because, again, despite the fact that the deputy president is the chair of IBEC, that really brings in intergovernmental relations and strengthens budgetary between national and government, national government ministries and departments and counties. Again, it is not true to say that counties have not been paid, or rather they've not been given monies for the last now close to 7 months because of Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua. So we are looking forward to seeing whether on Monday, tomorrow, Professor Kithure Kindiki will send monies to the counties so that counties are actually seen to be working. It is not also true to say that now youth of this country who are jobless will get jobs because Professor Kithure Kindiki is deputy president. So Kenya Kwanza government has to up its game, come up so strong with that spirit that Kenyans, gave to you, strengthen the hopes and really speak the voice of hope to the families that are struggling out there and really make leadership and governance work. The president has enough responsibility and expectations from Kenyans.
You made a very interesting statement that the law is very clear on how to add the number of sufurias of ugali on the table.
Precisely.
The region doesn't need Professor Kithure Kindiki. Noordean, if you didn't realize your contributions as far as Owidi is concerned, I've disqualified you from the vacant position of CS Interior.
Thank you very much.
And on your issues of
thank you very much.
on how to manage security, you will face some challenges.
I just want to add a few votes, then we can go home. Number one, my friend Osido said that on the X spaces we organized and planned very peaceful demos. I want to tell you that as they sent to us a red herring of planning peaceful demos on X, inside back rooms and basements they were planning the thuggery that came.
Kwa grand vigil ilikuwa different.
When you tell me that the demos turned violent, because of some rogue policemen start throwing tear gas. I expect peaceful people, when policemen start throwing tear gas, the worst they can do is defend themselves by fighting the police. But by burning buildings, looting, I think that is not the reaction of somebody reacting to policemen being rogue. But I think we need.
I know that you didn't interrupt me, but hence the call for accountability. That we have strong security systems like CCTV that should have captured these guys. Let them be arraigned in court and respond to why they are breaking into people's businesses.
We don't even need CCTV. When you have a battery of journalists in the streets with cameras that can pick photos even from 1 kilometer away, let them show us.
And literally everyone has got a smartphone.
Thing, the journalists were on the side of the Gen Zs. They need to tell us. So why do peaceful rioters turn into looters? And this thing of telling me about terrorists of special police unit, how do you know a terrorist? You know him by his actions. When we saw the so-called protesters acting like terrorists, then we need to throw in the police that is going to deal with terrorists. I don't know where they get time to really move to do some of the things they were doing, if it is the police to blame for turning violent. Then you're telling us that you have not seen any policeman being prosecuted for doing this. When you instruct the police, go in the streets and use the necessary force to stop any form of violence. If that thing remained largely peaceful, there was not going to be any form of police use of any kind of force. But when the police go to the streets, a few go with the live bullets, a few go with the rubber bullets, a few go with the tear gas canisters, and a few manage that water cannon. These policemen are interdependent, and the ones with the live bullets protect the ones with the rubber bullets, the one with the rubber bullets protects the one with the tear gas canisters, and so on. So that is the formation of the police. About AOCO, I don't think we are worth discussing AOCO. AOCO has besmirched exactly every politician in this country. Whoever will hurt AOCO, nobody will ever know. But whenever something happens, somebody's Jew is abducted, somebody's killed, all of you want to blame the government. The business of the government is not to abduct anybody, is not to hurt any citizen. Those are taxpayers, and we need those taxes. The government is not going to hurt anyone. But when you go around besmirching everybody, some very powerful people, and you expect to remain, they will abduct you. In any case, they now know that Kenyans have learned to blame the government on everything. So that is the problem. When you do the first demo, and we see through experience what you do in those demos, then we know how to deal with it the following day. And then there was a journalist who was shot. I heard you talk about it.
Okay, 24
Let
journalists.
me tell you my take. When there are riots, the police come from this side and the rioters from this side. If you are a journalist who has gone to cover the demos, you must be on the side of the police, not on the side of the rioters. Otherwise, you are most likely to get a stray canister or a stray bullet. But the policemen, the journalists in this country want to find out a policeman who is misbehaving so that they take a shot that they take back to studio. If you are a good journalist, so you've gone to discover to cover the demos, be on the side of the police, run between the policemen and cover the demos. Don't start covering the policemen. Because in a battlefield where we have policemen, we have journalists, and we have demonstrators, each one of them has an equal chance of getting hurt. So be careful, take care of yourself, and stop blaming the police. Now, about campaigns, people are telling us about what President William Ruto said during campaigns, and he has not done them. Let me tell you something about a campaign, because you have not done one. When you do one, you will know there is...
If you have done civil society campaigns.
Yes, you will know there is... Wait a minute. You will know there is pep talk, just to make people happy. There are promises, there are suggestions, there are covenants, and there is the manifesto. Don't expect all of this to take place and get implemented in equal measure.
Then there's the plan.
Yes, they are just... So,
Kevin, you've gotten your first tutorials on how to run a campaign.
And let me tell you about the NADCO. NADCO was just set up so that the protests by Azimio could end. Don't expect it to go anywhere. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Love you guys.
Finally, before you leave, you know, Kenya's got insurable interest in the US. You remember the first Kenyan-American president, Barack Obama? And now there's a lady, I understand, from Kakamega called Kamala.
Yes.
So there's Kamala Harris. In 1 minute each, starting from Noordean, what is your prediction?
Donald J. Trump, simple.
Owidi?
I saw an opinion poll today that really stressed me, that it is possible that somebody like Donald J. Trump, a person who asks his citizens to drink disinfectant because of that COVID. Guy has no intellectual capacity to lead a country like America. But one thing is for sure, people like him are the majority in society. Thank you.
Kevin?
You know I am an interested party. So do you...
You've got pecuniary interest.
Yeah, do you really want me to cast my vote? So let me abstain on this one. But I'll share my
secret ballot
on Wednesday morning after the 5th November.
But what I've told you is not a prediction, it's a spoiler.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know the difference. Kevin Osido, thanks a lot for your time. Owidi, you've been able to offer very useful insights and perspectives. And Noordean with his Gen Z.
No, I'm not Gen Z actually.
I think we have a good team today. A good team. I need 2 people, not one.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Yes.
Brilliant. Actually, you know, we've done an extra half an hour because the conversation was so solid. Even the feedback I got, people said that the conversation has to go on. So we've not even had time to go through the feedback.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Shukran.
It was a good show.
I think it was good.
Yeah, it was a nice show we've had.